And our special guest today on Absolutely Famous is one of the world's top rugby referees, Ben O'Keefe. And Ben, welcome to Absolutely Famous, and congratulations on being one of the referees appointed for the World Cup in France this year.
Yeah, thanks, mate. It's certainly goes around pretty quickly, and to get the phone call last week, I think it was, to say that you've got your ticket. Yeah, it was a nice relief, and I was able to sort of celebrate it with some friends and family, and then actually get stuck into planning what the rest of the year is going to look like.
Yeah, well, it's a massive honour for you, mate. I mean, I think you were the youngest at the last World Cup, the youngest referee there, and you're still only a pup in terms of refereeing. So you've obviously got more knowledge than you had last time regarding what to expect. So is it less pressure on you, or?
I don't think it'll be less pressure. I think it sort of empowers me a little bit knowing what I'm getting myself into. I thought at the last World Cup in Japan, I was pretty experienced then in terms of the games I've done, and I felt really confident going into it. And then you learn, okay, the differences of what a World Cup's like, and even the fact that you just have millions of people watching your games versus what you're probably used to when you're doing Super Rugby and your Test matches. But since then, done 4 more years of Test matches, Lions series, all those sort of things. So even though I think there will be more pressure just because of the type of rugby where it is, how competitive the teams are, I think I'm ready to sort of embrace it. It'll be good.
Of course, in France, those who have played there and coached there tell me that it's 10 levels more passionate as far as supporting their team goes. They're very emotional race, the French, and I'd imagine the place will go nuts if their team does well.
I think it's like none other. I just saw videos of La Rochelle after they just won their Heineken Cup over the weekend. Back home, their fans watching it and just parading the streets. And I've done 2 top 14 games in France, one down in Bayonne and one in Paris. And this is their club rugby, so they're equivalent probably to our Super Rugby. Their stadiums are full. The supporters have got all the flags, they're cheering, they're singing. They've got the bands they're playing with the trumpets and the drums, and so you put that on the level of that's their normal Super Rugby. This is a World Cup in France, and they love their rugby. They're pretty passionate, emotional, as you said. So I think you add that in a mixer with all the travelling fans, it's just going to be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, luckily I'll be among the travelling fans, so really looking forward to that first game in Paris, the All Blacks versus France. What a boomer that'll be.
Oh, that'll be massive. I don't know where I'll be. I'll probably be getting ready for another game somewhere, but look forward to just watching that, just seeing how it kicks off the tournament, because it's going to be, it's a big game to start off with the All Blacks and the French.
Yeah, pretty amazing. Now, there's 12 referees selected. You've got 7 TMOs and 7 assistant refs, and great to see the First Lady selected, Joy Neville from Ireland. That's a huge boost for the women's game.
Yeah, well, I think it's just a good boost for rugby now that we're picking the best people for the role, no matter not depending on gender at all. So we saw at the Women's World Cup here in New Zealand, an excellent group of match officials referee there. And Joy's been sort of on the scene for quite a few years now, and has just sort of led that women's space in terms of, I guess, breaking ceilings and sort of stereotypes. And she's come in and has been fantastic. And there could have been a number of other females who could have gotten a role as a TMO assistant referee. And I think one day, we'll definitely see one of them in the middle, and we just have one big team that goes out there and referees the best that we can.
Of course, you're teaming up with, arguably the best referee in the world, Wayne Barnes, 102 Test matches, and he was much maligned early in his career, of course, for that 2007 semi-final, which New Zealand got knocked out by France. I'm sure it wasn't nothing to do with him, but he's come a long way, hasn't he? What's he like as a bloke, Wayne Barnes?
Oh, he's one of the best guys ever. All those 12 referees, TMOs, assistant referees. You get to World Cups obviously because you're good at what you do, but they're all really good people, a lot of fun. Barnes is a leader in our group, a lot of fun as well. Likes to have a good time, but likes to be work really hard, be accurate in his refereeing. And to put in perspective, I've done I think 35 Test matches. He's done 102. So almost or more than triple what I've done in terms of experience. And I think with time in the middle and with all the experiences that he's had, it's not surprising that he can go out there and pretty much handle everything. But back to that 2007 game though, people don't realise is that back then we couldn't check anything with the TMO, and I think any referee in that same position would have obviously, the same outcome would have happened. So I feel from around that, because people talk about that and probably not his stellar career, which they should be so far, when really it was out of his control in that game. But no, it's like since then, obviously he's been a leader with our group, and teaches us a lot. So we've got a good group of guys, I think, in that top group of referees going to the World Cup, and I think we'll be able to handle hopefully any game that gets thrown our way.
Yeah, well, of course, it's Wayne Barnes's fifth World Cup, which is a pretty amazing achievement on its own, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he's the first to do 5. Is that right? I think there's been a few that have done 4, but 5, that's over 20 years. And I always say that it is hard to get to the top level. To go through the ranks and be consistent enough to be selected at that top level and to referee test matches, but to be able to stay there, I think, is even harder. And so he stayed there for 4 or 5 World Cup cycles, and just shown that the pressure, the ups and downs, the learnings, he's been able to be consistent all the way through that. So yeah, guys like himself and Jaco Piper, sort of leading the way there, which is good.
Yeah. You refereed in the last recently completed tournament, the Six Nations match between England and France. That'd be a fantastic experience in itself. Did you notice any differences in play? Anything trends that have developed that are new?
I've actually noticed. Actually probably the North and the South get more aligned in the way that they play. The speed of the game, a lot of set piece orientation in terms of just restarting play, and then moves off those set pieces like first and second phase. Obviously, there's been a lot more that we're picking up on in Super Rugby as the tap plays 5 metres out rather than 5 metre scrums. So we've been seeing that come into the game a lot more, which I think is really good. And then to see it at that top level at Six Nations, I think second to probably the World Cup. We talked before about the fans, the atmosphere. That's pretty special. So at Twickenham, we had a lot of travelling French fans. They were quite well supported, and the French played really well that game. England sort of got beaten up a little bit by them, but they turned it around the next week when they played Ireland. So it's going to make for an interesting. You look at the Six Nations leading into World Cup. It was pretty tight. Obviously, Ireland won the Grand Slam, but France were close. Even teams like Italy, they probably didn't win on paper as many games as they should have, as they did, but they were close almost every game. I think they're pretty much in the run for it. So it just shows that I think the North and the South getting pretty tight, pretty aligned in the way that they're playing, and it's going to make for a pretty close World Cup.
So it's very hard to compare, of course, what the All Blacks will be like. The team hasn't been selected yet, but judging by what I've seen on what we've all seen on Super Rugby, individually the talent's certainly there to match the Northern Hemisphere.
We've always had the talent, I think, in New Zealand. I think we always will. It's just something we grow up with. So that's what we're sort of blessed with. I see the same thing from the Australian teams. You put the best players in New Zealand, the best players in Australia, in their own respective teams, and they're very competitive. So I think the All Blacks definitely will be. It was like any other team in the world. It's all going to depend on how you play, injuries, referees' interpretations, potential cards. Touch wood. They can always affect the game, but they're looking at bringing in a bunker system, which I think might help. So there's all these things which I think is tracking well. Like for us as Kiwis and New Zealanders, it's going to be very good. And I think it's good for us to be able to play France first up. So get that out of the way, get into a good position where they can just settle in and go forward into deep into the comp.
I presume you have a bit of contact with the All Black coach during the season, as far as I guess he wants to know stuff about what they should be looking for. Is that true? Do you have a bit of? Do you get into the camp and help them out with the interpretations?
There's been a little bit. Yeah, there's been a little bit more around that recently, which I think is great. Like obviously, or maybe not so obvious, but over the last 2 years, every Super Rugby team's had a New Zealand professional referee aligned with them. So I've been aligned with the Hurricanes, means I go into Hurricanes trainings, but I can't ever referee AR or TMO a Hurricanes game. So there's been a lot more of that type of collaboration, and the All Blacks have certainly done the same thing recently. And I think they're looking for those sort of fine margins around law interpretation, understanding, being in front of probably where referees are at in terms of their interpretations. And I share as much as I can around that. And you get some good feedback around your own style and refereeing. So it's sort of like a little two-way relationship, which I think the majority of countries in the world have that. I know the English do, the French do. The French actually have the last World Cup final referee in camp with them constantly. Ireland do the same, Wales do the same. So yeah, it's there's a lot more collaboration there because I think teams are looking for that 1%er and trying to work out, okay, the laws are changing constantly, or we're trying to manipulate the laws and be on that edge. You know, what can we do, what we can't do. So I quite like how that's in place now.
Do you feel the new laws that have come in and the interpretations have sped the game up? Do you notice that? And is it pretty obvious to you?
It's obvious to me, and then we get all the stats, and after sort of, I think we're up to past round 10 now by a long shot. We've noticed that the game time has been shorter. So instead of having 100-minute games, we're sort of back to the 90-minute games, which is great because it means that there's less of that dead ball time. There's more ball in play, so the ball's been thrown around a bit more. And I think the fact that we're trying to speed up the scrum, the line out, we're trying to speed up the TMO process. It's really led to I think what is a good product in a game of rugby. So I think it's been great.
Yeah, of course, like the players, the referees, you've got an impressive warm up towards the World Cup. You've got 3 particularly big ones. You've got South Africa versus Australia in Pretoria in the Rugby Championship. If you refereed it in Pretoria, that's a bit of a cauldron for the Springboks, isn't it?
Yeah, I've refereed at Loftus a few times. Obviously, when we did Super Rugby and then the Test matches as well. I've refereed France versus South Africa there and been around the stadiums like Ellis Park and Kings Park and Durban. So their stadiums in South Africa are just incredible, and they get a lot of good fans, and the tunnels are really deep there to go through, so you're almost walking through the fans and the crowd, which is pretty exciting too. So yeah, I'll go do that, go kick off the first game of TRC and really start getting into, it's the Rugby Championship, but it's warm-ups leading into the World Cup. That's what everyone has their eye on. Yeah,
of course. I think you've got Scotland, Italy, and Scotland v France at Murrayfield, another amazing venue.
Yeah, Murrayfield, one of my favourite, to be honest. Just it's not the biggest of those international stadiums around the world, but I just like it. It just seems it's a little bit smaller and darker, and there's a little bit more fog there, and the anthems are great. So I enjoy that. So I'll be in Edinburgh for 2 weeks, sort of the end of August.
Fantastic. And what about, of course, you're an ophthalmologist, an eye doctor, Ben, and do you still get time to do that while you're in the middle of the rugby season?
Yeah, I do. I've got a really good relationship with the Wellington Public Hospital, so they're always needing doctors, especially eye doctors, to come in and help them out when I can. So when I'm in country, I'll probably work 1 to 2 days a week. But it just gives me the flexibility that I go in to help out and assist. There's no clinics under my name, so if I can't make it because we've got meetings or I have to be with the team or I'm travelling, people don't miss out being seen. So it just means that extra hands on deck when I'm around. But when I go, it gives me the flexibility that I can, because I'll be gone for example, at Scotland Test, I'll be gone for 3 weeks, getting over there, 2-week game, and then coming back. So it's a bit of time away throughout the year, especially in a World Cup year.
Yeah. Well, Ben, congratulations once again for being one of the 12 refs selected for the World Cup in France, and we wish you all the very best for that and the upcoming games. And thanks so much for being a guest on our on Absolutely Famous.
Easy, mate, and looking forward to catching up and having a beer over in France with you.
Yes, that'll be a good one. Well, good on you, mate. Thank you.